Welcome to Toronto Sports Rush. It's Tuesday, and I'm joined by Pierre McGuire for a special edition McGuire Tuesday because Pierre wasn't available yesterday because he's a man of the world, and this is a very busy offseason. Pierre, let's get right into it. The NHL Draft is right around the corner. We're basically on the eve of it right now. What can we expect from this year's draft class?
Toronto to keep their pick, San Jose potentially to trade their pick. I think at number 3, Vancouver will keep their pick. I think at number 4, Chicago still has their pick in play. And I think at 5, the Rangers still might have their pick in play. That being said, I'd be shocked if Gavin McKenna did not go number 1 overall. I'd be very surprised if Ivar Stenberg didn't go number 2 overall. He's a tremendous player out of Sweden. I watched him play in practice before the World Hockey Championships. I watched him at the World Hockey Championships. He reminds me a lot of a player that in 1991 I was privileged enough to be part of drafting in Marcus Naslund, who ended up having an amazing career with the Vancouver Canucks, had almost 400 goals in his career. I think Stenberg would go 2. I think Chase Reed, the defenseman out of Sault Ste. Marie, will go 3. He's big, he's mobile, he's offensively talented, he makes a good first pass. I know I said 3, but I think Caleb Malholter will eventually go 3 to Vancouver. We'll see how that plays out. Carson Carrolls, I think, will go probably at 5, but I got a couple sleepers for you.
Okay.
Kyle, I do, and one of them is Viggo Bjork. I watched him just like I watched Ivar Stenberg at the Swedish national camp, and that was in Ängelholm, Sweden, on the west coast, just south of Gothenburg and just north of Denmark, believe it or not, in Copenhagen. And he's such a hockey sense player. He's undersized, but he's extremely talented. And his father, who I spent some time with over in Sweden, he's a big man. So, and he was a very good player. So I think this kid's got a chance to grow. And my ultimate sleeper is Albert Schmitz from Latvia. Picture this as a 17-year-old. He played in Finland. He played in Germany. He played in the World Championships. He played in the World Junior Championships. And he played in the Olympics. Like, that's a full season for a 17-year-old.
Yeah. Pierre, I agree with you completely. It's very hard to see the Toronto Maple Leafs potentially dealing this first overall pick. I cannot picture that happening. But this seems like a draft class where one of these other guys could easily go first any other year, except it's projected that McKenna is a generational talent. Is there any chance that there's no way the Leafs are dealing this pick, not with the way they're already moving in the offseason and that, right? They're keeping this guy and they're going to take their chances that he will live up to the billing.
Yeah. So the biggest thing with Gavin came on the stage as a 15-year-old, and you could tell he was going to be a really good player. He's not Crosby-esque. Please do not misunderstand me. He's a natural winger, not a centerman. And by the way, Kyle, this is really important. It looks like McKenna and Stenberg will go 1-2. We haven't had 2 wingers go in the first 2 picks of the NHL draft since 2007. And that was Patrick Kane going to Chicago and James Van Riemsdyk going to Philadelphia. That's the last time we had 2 wingers picked in the first 2 picks of a National Hockey League draft. But I do think it'll happen this year with McKenna going 1 and Stenberg going 2. Now, I think Toronto keeps their pick. I don't
Yeah.
see any way that they trade it. I don't know about San Jose keeping their pick. I don't know. I really don't know about the Rangers at 5 keeping their pick. I don't know about Chicago at 4 keeping their pick. I do think Vancouver at 3 will keep their pick.
Pierre, I was thinking about this a little bit last night. Obviously, Stenberg's promise is so high. Any year that McKenna's not here, he might be the number one
I
overall
agree.
pick. But do you think there's any chance the San Jose Sharks take Chase Reed second in order to address their defensive problems?
They could, but I'd be surprised because you got to remember they have Eklund there. Offense
Mhm.
matters still in the league.
Yeah, it
And
does.
Eklund's a Swede. I know he's a Djurgården guy, and the other guy's a Frölunda guy. And they're big rivals, obviously. I don't know if anybody in the audience has ever been to a Frölunda Gothenburg game versus Djurgårdens from Stockholm, but I've been to a plenty of them. And that's like the Hatfields and McCoys. It's a whole lot of nasty stuff. But all that being said, I'd be surprised if San Jose did not take Stenberg if he was available. I believe it's because they would have traded the pick. They would
I
have
just want to,
traded the
I
pick to
just
get
want to,
established NHL
yeah, yeah.
player.
I just want to step in and please, does anyone in the audience that has been to one of those games, please leave a comment under this video. And of course, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. But most importantly, if you've been to one of those games, you have to leave a comment because you and Pierre need to connect somehow on a golf
You
course
know what?
one
You know
day.
what's really cool about what you just said, though, Kyle? About 4 years ago, I took my wife to a game between Frölunda and Djurgården. And, we have a son that plays pro
It was
hockey.
on her wish list, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. So, anyways, her husband been in hockey a long time,
Mhm.
and we go and he goes, "I've heard you talk about this so often. I didn't believe you." And then I went to the game. She's like, "Oh my gosh!" And she says, of all the things she's been to, maybe one of her most memorable experiences. She couldn't
Well, I
believe it.
mean, I think she's probably been to enough games that that speaks very, very highly of what we've
Yeah,
seen. Okay, so we've gone over the draft. I think it's probably going to go down the way you just broke it down, Pierre. There might be some movement at 3 and 4 there. Maybe
yeah.
Stenberg. I. It certainly seems like those top 2 picks are the
Well, if
way
he
to go
slips,
this year.
Kyle, if he slips, if Stenberg slips, somebody's getting an amazing player. So that's why I
Yeah.
use the 91 draft. I know it's a long time ago, but the 91 draft, people will remember Marcus Naslund. They'll also remember Peter Forsberg.
Mhm.
Forsberg went at 6. Kovalev went at 15. Like there were players that slipped in that draft. Kovalev and Naslund were 2 of them. And if you go look at their career numbers, it's mind shattering to think about. But I can tell you right now, when I spent a lot of time in Europe that year, and I wanted and our team wanted Forsberg because we were looking at our center ice position long term with obviously Mario and Ronnie Francis and Brian
Mhm.
Trottier, and we thought Brian was getting older, and he was, and we thought that Forsberg would be able to slip in the 3 hole and eventually replace Ronnie or Mario when they were retiring. But Inge Hammerstrom, the former Leaf, knew Forsberg better than anybody. So he didn't let Philadelphia bypass Forsberg. And that's when I remember we were sitting at the table and we're going, either going to get Kovalev or Naslund because they're going to slip. And they did. In this draft, if Stenberg slips, it'll be the biggest mistake any team that passes on him could make. That would
Those are
be a
strong,
terrible
strong
mistake.
words, Pierre. But I tend to agree with you. And that Forsberg and Kovalev kids, they turned out okay.
Well, pretty good. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
pretty good.
not bad. They didn't do too bad. Okay, so enough of the draft right now. We got to get back to the Maple Leafs, and there's a lot of reports coming out about things that may be happening with this team, and I'm a little bit baffled by one because they've now been linked to Sergei Bobrovsky, a 38-year-old goaltender who's won the Cup and is very experienced, incredible resume, and Jordan Binnington. And it seems to me like these could be rumors that are just drumming up business for those guys, maybe because I don't think at this point with Akhtamov, Hildeby, and of course Stolars, I don't know that the Leafs goaltending is their primary concern at this point.
No, it shouldn't be. They should be really proud of the depth that they've accumulated in goal, even though these are obviously players that are holdovers from previous management groups. That being said, if you've got a 38-year-old goalie that's won 2 Stanley Cups and been in the final 3 times in the last 4 years, pretty impressive. But you still at 38, you need to drum up business. You're trying to create marketplace if the player can't go back to Florida. So in Bobrovsky's case, I'd be hard pressed to see him becoming a Leaf. In terms of Binnington, I could see it. He's an Ontario guy. He's won the Stanley Cup. He's played in the Olympics. He's played in the 4 nations. I mean, he's played in a lot of big events, and I don't think he'd be intimidated by the theater. That being said, is he trending upward right now, or are the other guys in the Leafs organization trending upward? It would depend on the price point. It really would on whether you do that or not.
And to me, you have to look at I've been talking about Akhtamov all season long, Pierre, and
You're
now
right.
he's just
You're the
gone and
first
won
guy that ever did, by the way. I wanna give you credit. You did.
well, I mean, he seemed positioned as someone they were grooming for this position, and he just won the Jack A. Butterfield Trophy as the most valuable player in the AHL playoffs, en route to a 4-1 Calder Cup Series victory by the Toronto Marlies. Like, we can't say enough about the importance of the experience at that level. Yes, I get it; it's not at the NHL, but
Yeah.
pressure is pressure, and he's now shown that he plays better under pressure. We can't really count his NHL appearances late last season for too much of the weight of the judgment of him because the team they were in the toilet at that point, Pierre.
You're so spot on. You couldn't be more right, Kyle. You're the voice of reason on this. I mean that in a complimentary way. And I'll tell you one other thing. You have an ally in John Gruden, the coach of the Toronto
Mhm.
Marlies, where I read yesterday when I was in Toronto for the Hockey Hall of Fame selection committee meetings. I read what John Gruden said. He says he definitely has a future in Toronto as long as they give him an opportunity to play.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is you got to wrap your head around the opportunity to give a younger goalie an opportunity to come up and play in the NHL and maybe live with some of his, foibles early on to see what he's going to be. Montreal did it this year with Jakub Dobeš. Because if everybody says, I love how everybody says Jakub Dobeš is a rookie. Jakub Dobeš played in the NHL a year ago. It wasn't like he was a raw rookie being thrown into the Coliseum. He had experience, and the year before he made some mistakes. He
Mhm.
also did some good things, but Montreal is prepared to live with that. If Toronto's prepared to live with that from Maximoff, they're going to have an opportunity to have a homegrown star goalie for a long time.
I remember I heard Marty Brodeur say this a long time ago and talk about how when a young goaltender comes up, one of the most important parts of their development is going into a game, having 5 or 6 scored on them in the first 2 periods, and then learning to let that go and understand that it's a clean sheet next time out and it's something entirely different. I really do feel like young goaltenders need to understand that early on in their career, that's not the end of the world and it can settle them in a way because the team gets a clean sheet, as I just said, the next game.
So smart. And I'll give you an example on Marty. I tried to recruit Marty out of Montreal Bourassa, midget AAA team in Montreal when I was coaching at St. Lawrence University in Canton, New York. And we almost got him. He ended up going major junior to play for St. Hyacinthe. But in the 1990 draft, he was a 20th pick overall. And I was really bummed because we traded our second round pick to Calgary for Joey Mullen. But we were going to use that to move up to try to get in the top 20 so we could take Brodeur after we took Yager. Anyways, long story short on Brodeur, he turns pro. I'm out on the road watching a game in Utica, New York. Herb Brooks is the coach of the Utica Devils. And there's Marty Brodeur starting in an American Hockey League game for Herb Brooks in Utica, New York. And Marty has a tough game. And Scotty Bowman says to me, how do you play? I said, yeah, a tough game. And then all of a sudden, like 2 weeks later, he's in the NHL and he's shredding it. He's ripping it up. It's to your point. Exactly right.
And we can't talk about this offseason without talking about Matthew Knies briefly. But at this point, Pierre, I'm quite convinced that Matthew Knies' name constantly being out there, the only situation in which I can see the Leafs moving on from him would be if another desperate team made a ridiculous offer for him that would strengthen their position so much. I don't see them shopping him so much as they are willing to listen to offers.
I love how you said that. Listen to offers. Yes. I think they've created marketplace because of some of the rumors that were out there. But all that being said, I don't believe for 1 second that the rumored offer with Montreal was actually true. I don't think Montreal was paying that kind of compensation to get Matthew Knies into Montreal. That being said, I'll just use an example. If I were Utah right now, I'd have significant interest because could you imagine he goes back with Logan Cooley, who we played with at the University of Minnesota, and they have Dylan Gunther? This is a team in Utah that nobody's talking about right now. They probably push Vegas around harder than anybody else in the playoffs until Vegas had to play against Carolina. I think Utah is going to be dangerous. That should be a team that should be talking to Matthew Knies right now, or not Matthew Knies, but to Toronto about
Right.
Knies if they're going to trade Knies, if they're going to trade him. I don't know if they're going to trade him or not, but I don't believe for 1 second that the compensation you saw in the papers for Knies from Montreal is true. I don't believe that.
Fair enough, Pierre. And Morgan Rielly's name keeps coming up,
Yeah.
and it's understood now that he has given a list of team names to Toronto that he would be willing to accept a trade to. And apparently, a lot of that list does include Western Conference teams moving out towards the western part of the continent. Is there any surprise there?
No, no surprise at all, and I hope he goes exactly where he wants to go. He's
Yeah.
been a good soldier for a long time in Toronto. He's been nothing but class to deal with. Every time I've had the opportunity to deal with Morgan, he's been phenomenal. He doesn't point fingers. He's never whined or complained. I'm a huge fan of him as a person, and I've been a big fan of his as a player. I remember going to watch him play in old Moose Jaw in the Moose Jaw Arena, and right across the street was a great A&W. But I had a lot of good thoughts watching Morgan Rielly play junior in Moose Jaw.
Yeah, he has been a good soldier, Pierre. He's been a good person on and off the ice, and I think it's a great time for a fresh start for both sides of this
Yeah.
equation. And should he move on, the fan base should wish him well and hope that he continues his career with some success elsewhere, and that they get something in return that is able to make the Leafs upper brass happy. Okay, I hate talking about the Florida Panthers, Pierre, but we're not going to avoid the Florida Panthers because the Kachuk brothers have now been reunited, and that's going to create a havoc for a lot of the league because those boys play well together.
They do, and they're gonna have Sammy Bennett to run roughshod with them.
You imagine that line? Oh my God,
No,
Pierre.
no. But you
Who
know
would
what?
want to play against them?
It's gonna change the shopping list for some teams in the Atlantic Division.
It will.
Like, if you're Montreal and you think you're a legitimate contender, are you more robust enough to play against the Florida Panthers right now? If you're Tampa Bay and you need to play against them, are you gonna be robust enough? If you're Toronto and, people this is important to say. Like, I know they traded Nicky Roy, they thought he wasn't good enough for what they wanted, and I know they traded Scott Laughton. There's still holes in the center ice position in Toronto. It's not like they've,
Yes.
figured out the way to get through the center ice position. So you look at the Florida Panthers, just their depth chart at center. You start with Barkov, you go down obviously to, let's just say, Bennett, then you go to Lundell. That's tough.
It's tough.
It's really tough. I mean, that they're going to be a good team. They have to stay healthy. They're one of the older teams now. They're not young, but Florida should have a bounce back year. And I think I shared with you when I was over in Sweden. I had a long chat with Sasha Barkov and with Anton Lundell, and both those guys. You could see for Finland, they were getting juiced up and ready. And they said, "We'll be back and ready to go with the Florida Panthers next year." They're not kidding. They will be.
It's an exciting time in the offseason, Pierre. The teams are loading up and the
Yeah.
draft hasn't even happened yet. And then you can just imagine the movement after the draft leading into this fall. It's interesting. I think Leafs fans right now should be optimistic about what they've seen so far, but I think they should have their eyes wide open because there's no chance this management group is done at this point.
No, no way. In fact, I would be shocked if they didn't make a big splash at the draft. I'd be very, very surprised.
Very interesting. Good to hear. Okay, now Pierre, let's close here. I'm not sure how many people of our audience is aware of this, but you are actually part of the Hockey Hall of Fame selection committee. What can you tell us about this year's class?
Well, it starts with Patrice Bergeron. You couldn't have more of a classier guy to go in the class of 26, and Patrice Bergeron, thrilled to death for him. The goaltending element was huge this year with Carey Price. People forget the '07 World Juniors part of the evaluation process of 14 Olympics is part of it. The U18 in 2005 is part of it. Obviously, playing 15 years in Montreal is a huge part of it, helping bring the Canadians to the Stanley Cup final where they lost to Vegas, or where they beat Vegas and lost to Tampa. Um, so many good things about Carey. And then Pekka Rinne. I know there's some doubters out there in Pekka Rinne. So here's what I'd say to all the doubters. Please do yourself a favor and go look at the statistics of when he played in the league versus the other goalies. Look at his save percentage, look at his wins, and look at his goals against, and you'd be shocked. And there are a lot of people in the world, the hockey world, that believe he may be the best Finnish goaltender ever produced. And what people forget is that he was older when he was drafted by Nashville. He played a full 3 years in the American Hockey League before he got a chance to play in the NHL. And then the rest is history. He brought Nashville to a Stanley Cup final in 2017. He won the Vezina Trophy. There's so many things you can say about Pekka, and just a phenomenal ambassador of the game. Phenomenal.
And not to mention the father of the aforementioned Chuck brothers heading into the hall this year too, as well as he not.
Yes, he is. Keith is going in. First time I saw Keith play, he was playing at Malden Catholic High School in Boston. His draft year, he broke his ankle. If it weren't for Joe Yannetti, a legendary scout in the National Hockey League for so many years, if it weren't for Joe, I'm not sure Keith would have gone in the first round, but he went 19th overall to Winnipeg. Played on arguably the best line ever in Winnipeg. Some people would debate me on it and say, no, no, no. What about when Bobby Hull played on the hotline with Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nielsen? That line was arguably the best line ever, but I'll take, where Keith Kachuk was playing with Timo Solani and Zamnov. That line was really darn good. I coached against them. But Keith had an amazing career. Nobody played more Olympics in the United States than him. He played in 4. He played more Olympic games than any American-born player. He's the 15th all-time scorer for power play goals in the league. He's 9th overall in the history of the National Hockey League for total goals. 9th. Everybody ahead of him was in the Hall of Fame, and now he's in the Hall of Fame. But the biggest thing to me is second all-time for American-born scorers, goal scorers. Only Mike Modano has more goals than him. His numbers are just electrifying when you look at them.
And Pierre, also in the builder category, Brian Burke, who we actually interviewed here on the channel, he's had a long and distinguished career as an NHL executive and disciplinarian.
Very much so. And what people don't realize about Brian was the art of the deal. I know I'm taking a term from President Donald Trump, but really, Brian Burke was as good as there was when it came to making deals, especially at the draft. The Sedins would not be in Vancouver if it weren't for Brian Burke. There's no way Hartford. I was sitting in the room with him when he did the deal with San Jose and Calgary to get Christopher Pronger, the second overall in the 1993 draft. That was all Brian all the time. It was magnificent to watch him make deals. He was involved, heavily involved, obviously, in Anaheim by winning the cup. And you look at the players he brought in there to help them with Francois Beauchemin, Christopher Pronger, obviously Scotty Niedermayer, so many good players. And then his time in Calgary, his time in Pittsburgh, his time in Toronto, just a magnificent career. And people forget this about Brian. He was an agent, and he was a top level agent for a long period of time and represented a lot of big name players.
One more notable name is, of course, Carey Price. And Pierre, you've been so close to the Montreal Canadiens for so much of your career. I'm sure you followed him closely. What can you say about the career he had? Because when he was good, he was the best there was.
15 years in the league, phenomenal at the World Junior in '07, phenomenal in the Olympics in 14. Played 5 games at the Olympics in 2014. He had 2 shutouts. He had almost a half a goal a game, goals against average, which is amazing when you consider best on best. I've known Kerry a long time, watched him play junior, obviously, and what a career. What an amazing career. The thing that blows everybody away in the hockey world, 15 years as a goalie for the Montreal Canadiens. You know how hard that is to do? It's hard to do 1 year. He did 15 of them. It's pretty amazing.
Pierre, the United States women's hockey team is clearly the class of the IIHF globally right now. And to that, they owe a lot of credit of this year's inductee, Cindy Curley.
So I've known Cindy since she played at Assabet Valley, which is just outside of Boston. She was a tremendous player at Providence College. She played for a gentleman by the name of Johnny Marchetti. His nickname was the Jet because he could really skate. He played college hockey at Providence as well. But Cindy Curley was an unbelievable talent. Worst thing that happened to her was she was obviously too old when the Olympics came up. So she has no Olympic pedigree, but she really was a trailblazer for the women's game, especially at the collegiate level in the United States. If back in the day I ran with Steve Sterling, the former coach of the New York Islanders, we ran this women's hockey camp. We had 850 women a summer. Obviously, they were young ladies come through the camp, and Cindy was one of them. And it was amazing to watch how good some of these women were. But she was at that time, she was the level that you wanted to get to. She was the best female player at that time.
Pierre, thank you once again for your insight and your knowledge on all of these topics. I have a feeling I'm going to be seeing a lot of you over the course of the next couple of weeks, including in the next few days. So
That's what we
everyone's,
like. That's
as
what
we
we
love it,
like.
it tis the season, right? So stay tuned to Toronto Sports Rush, like and subscribe, of course, and we will be seeing you with Pierre later this week.